What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I hope you like this video. This is Bel Air Season 1, Episode 2. So, it is the aftermath of the fight, and Aunt Viv is trying to talk to Will and Carlton to find out what really happened. And, of course, Carlton is playing victim like Will is such a thug and he just, was fighting for no reason. Will was like, he pushed me in the pool, I can't swim, and if it wasn't for Lisa, I would be in a body bag. And as soon as Aunt Viv heard Lisa's name, she looks at Carlton and Carlton looks away and she's like, yeah, of course. Like, this whole thing makes sense now. And, she tells Will to go to his room. She tells Carlton to go to his room. And Carlton is like, I don't understand why y'all are defending him. Like, he hit me, yada, yada. So she goes to Uncle Phil. Come to find out, Uncle Phil had to make things right with Connor's parents. Because remember, he punched Connor, too. But he was able to basically get around that because he reminded Connor's parents that y'all was actually, allowed them to throw this party that had underage drinking and drugs going on, okay? But Uncle Phil is like, why are we trying? Like, why are we trying to save this kid who doesn't want to be saved? And she said, listen, we owe him that considering. And she sort of trailed off and they gave each other this look. And once again, I feel like we're going to get a deeper story as it relates to Will and his father and maybe what happened in the past. I talked about that in the last episode. So, Uncle Phil is like, well, listen, I get that, but he don't have to stay here. Like, he can go to a military academy. He can go to boarding school because, I don't know, we had the gun, we had the fight. He ain't been here 2 days. So, Aunt Viv is saying, no, that's not going to happen. I'll talk to him. And Uncle Phil was like, no, we're going to talk to him. And if I'm not happy with his answers, then we're going to make some other decisions. So she agrees. So they go up to Will's room to talk to him. And Will is in tears. And they're like, what's wrong, Will? Trey done got shot. Now, I meant to say that in my last review, that I knew Trey. I'm glad he just got shot and he didn't get killed. Because I just knew Trey was going to get killed. But Trey did get shot, and at first we didn't know whether he was going to make it or not, but we find out that Trey did make it. It was really just a flesh wound, but of course it scared everybody, including Will, and he did later on in the episode eventually end up talking to Trey, and I was worried that Trey was going to be mad at him and blame him and, all of that, but he really didn't. He was like, listen, they still looking for you. They are convinced that you're in Philly. I got caught slipping. You stay where you are. I get it. I miss you. I love you. We good, right? So I was happy to hear that because I was really worried that Trey was going to be like, you did this. It's your fault. Why didn't you come back? So the next morning, Will comes down for breakfast. Everybody's already at the table. Will, it's his first day of school at Bel Air Academy. And everybody's eating Hillary's cooking. And once again, it is good. Everybody's impressed. And she has her interview with Haute Couture later on that day, and she's talking about what she's going to make for them. And Viv is like, why don't you make them the po' boy? I think that's a little more sophisticated than what you made for breakfast. And she was like, but that's the kind of food I want to make. I want to make the food for every day, that everyday situation, people who don't need all this expensive equipment. And Viv is like, yeah, but I think that, for Haute Couture, you might need to jazz it up a little bit. And you can, again, see the tension between them. She says, listen, I don't come down to your school and tell you how to teach, okay? Don't be trying to tell me how to cook. After breakfast, Will tries to talk to Carlton. Carlton ain't trying to hear it. And Will doesn't apologize. I mean, once again, I think Will is trying to make Carlton understand that he was wrong and, whatever. And Carlton basically tells him, listen, good luck today because you're going into my territory and I hope you get there well, because he ends up leaving him and Will don't have no ride. So Aunt Viv is like, so how you miss your ride to school? And he was like, Carlton don't want no parts of me. She was like, do you blame him? Like, at the end of the day, I understand why the fight happened, but both of y'all had a part in that and you should have apologized. And the fact that you didn't apologize, that's a problem. And she told him, she said, listen, this whole keeping it real, keeping it thug, because Will was trying to tell Carlton, look, you rolled up on me, and from where I'm from, those are fighting words, and you got what you asked for. And Viv is like, listen, I hear it. You know, I grew up in West Philly too. I know what you're talking about. But at the end of the day, you won't have to let that go. Like in this world, that mentality doesn't get you far. And ultimately, yes, Carlton got, Carlton was no angel. Excuse me. Carlton was no angel in this situation. But at the end of the day, you opened up the door for the bad behavior, right? So she lets Will take her car. So he drove a Lexus to school. He gets to school and nobody is speaking to him. Like everybody's ignoring him. People he thought that he might have met, maybe vibed with, people he know their name. Like everybody's just walking past him like they don't know him, right? He's we found out that Carlton had a speech to give that day because he got that black eye and he's upset about having to give this speech. So Will goes to his first period class and it's empty. Like there's nobody in class. So he starts walking around like trying to figure out why nobody's in class. He runs into security and security is like, what are you doing up here? And of course, it's his first day of school. He ain't wearing the uniform properly. Nobody recognizes him. He's like, I need to see your ID. We see him have a flashback to the night of the incident, and he has a flashback to the police rolling up on him, and so he ends up taking off, right? And security chases him, and he ends up running into the auditorium and actually runs up on stage while Carlton is in the middle of giving his speech. And of course, it's a whole embarrassing situation, and Carlton is like, no, come here, let me talk to you. So I guess he's like the junior class president. He's trying to get them to sign off on this new initiative. And he was like, he starts asking Will, he's like, Will, this is my cousin Will, he just transferred here. And he starts asking him about the school he came from. He's like, you went to public school, so tell me, at your school, did they have this? At your school, did they have that? At your school, did they have foreign exchange opportunities? And, of course, Will was like, no. He was like, see? So, he said, see, so I'm trying to get them to sign off on the initiative for, why are we going to take, and send our money overseas to somewhere overseas when we could adopt a public school that's not as, that doesn't have what we have. And so, of course, Will tries to, like, say, but wait a minute, like, my school might have been, but, and Carlton's like, nope, don't worry about it. No. And, of course, he flips the whole thing. And again, we see Carlton and this charm and why people probably like him, even though at the end of the day, he's pretty much a jerk. So after that, we see Will go to the basketball coach. We see him visit the basketball coach and basically, with his cocky attitude, tell the basketball coach, you need me. I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I'm D9 recruited. Why, blah, blah, blah. And the coach was like, yeah, I don't want no parts of that, especially after I saw that video from this weekend and that fight. Like, I don't want your problems. He said, listen, at the end of the day, I know who you are and I know what you bring to the team, but I also know that nobody transfers in the middle of their junior year being recruited by top colleges without it being a story. So I don't know if I want any parts of it. And so Will was like, well, what do I need to do to get on your team? He said, you're going to have to do like anybody else. You're going to have to try out. And at first, Will is like, try out? Like, what? And he was like, I mean, if you want to try out, I'll be here tomorrow at whatever time, whatever the time they lined up. We can either do it that way or, you could watch it from the sidelines. I mean, it is what it is. So then we see Will walking down the hall and he sees Lisa and he's like, yo, Lisa, you need to help me out. Like, Carlton got the whole school hating me because he didn't turn himself into a victim and made me out to be, this thug that like attacked him or something. And Lisa was like, I tried to tell you. She said, listen, when me and Carlton broke up, he was the brokenhearted, kid and I was the mean-hearted bitch. Like, so I understand. He said, well, can you help me? She said, I really don't want to get in the middle of you and Carlton's shit. Like, I really don't want to get in the middle of it. But he basically convinces her to say something, right? And again, they're flirting a little bit, they still got this flirty thing going on. And I have to say at this point, Will, you playing games. Because at this point, that there's a history there, and you know it's not a good history, and that's still your cousin. You might not like Carlton, but you know that you opening up a can of worms with that bullshit. Like you know that. So then we see Uncle Phil on his radio show. He went to Big Boy, big radio DJ out there in LA, and he's appealing to that urban audience because that's and he's saying all the right things. Of course, he's a politician. He's saying all the right things. And Big Boy trying to throw some jabs at him and he talks about how, he became a lawyer and he was able to get his family's land back that had been stolen from them. And he was able to win a lot of big, class action lawsuits. And that's kind of how he built his money. Like he didn't necessarily come from mega bucks, but he living really good now. And so they open up the lines for call-ins, and basically everybody who calls in just wants to know how rich he is and how much money he has. Not so much worried about not so much concerned about the issues. And he keeps trying to get everybody back on track to talk about the issues, but they ain't really trying to do all of that. So then we see Hillary, and we see her audition for Hope, Cuisine. She made the po' boys like her mama said, but she also made like collard greens and coleslaw, and it looked really nice. The presentation looked really nice, and they enjoyed the food. And they go to offer her a job. However, they have some conditions. The first condition is they tell her that her dress is a little too loud. They said that they need her to dress in more muted tones, and they really need to sort of approve her attire. Then they said that they also need to approve whatever she posts on her Instagram, that sort of, I guess that's representing the company, because they want to make sure that it's within the liking of the Hope Cuisine, standard. Then they told her that her food is too spicy and she really needs to dial it down a little bit. And she said, well, she said, that's what makes my food great. Like, everybody loves my spice. And they were like, yeah, but with all due respect, your family isn't our target audience. And then they caught themselves and was like, yeah. So later on that day, Aunt Viv comes home and Aunt Viv is excited. Aunt Viv is like, oh my gosh, like, you got the job. And she said, I don't know about that. And she tries to explain to her mom that they want her to change who she is. They basically told her that, her ethnic family wasn't their target audience. And she was like, I just don't know if that's what I want to do, because I don't want to mute myself. I don't want to have to water down what it is that I'm trying to do. And I want to be, I want to stay dedicated to my brand. And so, of course, Aunt Viv was like, listen, we all have to compromise. We all have to make adjustments. Like, you've been offered a job with the top, magazine in the country, and you said that's what you wanted. Like, I called in favors for this to happen, and now you're kind of throwing it back in my face. And she said, listen, everybody can't teach she said, you're teaching rather than being an artist. You're teaching art rather than being an artist. And I don't want that for myself. And Ashley is there. You could tell that sort of stung Aunt Viv a little bit. And she basically was like, you know what, fine. It's your life. Do what you do. It's your life, girl. Do what you want to do. Now, back up at Bel Air Academy, Will is walking across the courtyard, and Connor comes up to him and says, hey, you, and he holds up his phone, and Will is like, what is that? And he was like, it's a restraining order, which means you have to stay 10 feet away from me at school and 20 feet away from me outside of school. He's like, you've been, basically you've been served. And he says, everybody got that? Everybody see it? And of course, everybody has got their phones out and they're taking videos and pictures and everything. And so Carlton walks up on Will, and Will was like, fine, I get it. You run the school. I'm in your world. Fine. I'm sorry. And Carlton was like, oh, no. It's too late now. Like, I wanted an apology this morning. Now it's too late. Like, basically, you in my world, and I'm going to keep stomping on you until I get tired of stomping on you, right? So, of course, Will, he said this isn't going to be over until we fight fair and square. Like, not when I was half drunk, and I was caught off guard. Like, let's go. Me and you going to square up right here. And you could see Will thinking about it. And then he finally says, if I beat your ass, I win. If I lose. No, he said, if I beat your ass, I lose. If I lose, I lose. So, nah, I'm good. I'm walking away. And of course, that's not what Carlton wants, because part of this is Carlton got his ass beat in front of all of his friends and he's embarrassed. So he wanted that rematch so he could, it's in his mind, I'm sure he thinks that he could beat Will in a one-on-one fight when he had time to get himself together. But Will didn't give him that, which I'm sure pissed him off all over again. So after school, we see Will meeting up with Jazz, going down to the basketball court so he can, I guess, get ready for his tryout, knock out the cobwebs. And every time he goes to take a shot, once again, he's flashing back to that night. He's got some PTSD from that night. He's got some PTSD from that night. And he can't make the shot. He's getting more and more frustrated. And Jazz finally says to him, listen, you don't have to tell me everything, but you need to tell me something. And Will doesn't really get into all of the details, but he says, listen, basketball has always been my way. And if I want to survive at this school, I gotta find a way. And basketball has always been it until now. Like now, I can't make a shot. Like it's become my enemy instead of my friend, So back at the house, we see Uncle Phil. Well, actually, we see Aunt Viv, and she gets a call from her big sister, which of course she don't even want to answer that phone call because she already knows it's about to be some shiggity with it. So she does answer the phone, and her sister is like, "What's going on with Carlton beating up on my son?" And she was like, "Listen, Carlton got the worst end of that. Like Will definitely beat Carlton's ass. So, I mean, let's not act like Will can't defend himself." And they had the same that sister conversation. Like, listen, I didn't send him out there for that. She said, I wish I could bring him home, but after Trey got shot, it's still not safe. And she's like, listen, I'm probably not gonna be able to bring him home until after Christmas break. Is that cool? Are you and Phil still cool with that? And she was like, we got him. Like, we got Will. We're good. Now, while that's going on, we see Uncle Phil talking to Jeffrey. We see them in his study, listening to a little bit of Tribe Called Quest, sipping on some good brown. And he says to, Jeffrey, like, what am I going to do with Will? And Jeffrey says, listen, you got to give him time to adjust. He's only been here a couple of days. Like, you got it. He said, when I moved from Jamaica to London, it took me a minute to adjust as a kid. You got to give him time. You got to give him time. And he says to him, he said, listen, he said, now I can't remember what he said, but he told him to give him time. He said, but talk to him, like figure it out, go and talk to him and try to find some common ground with him. He said, I've been watching him, and when he thinks nobody's looking and he lets his guard down, he's trying to figure it out. He's looking around. He's very self-conscious, making sure that am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing it the right way? So you got to give him time, right? So we see Will outside playing basketball, practicing, right? Practicing his shots again. And Uncle Phil comes out there with them. And Uncle Phil's like, basically, yo, what's good? What's going on? He said, I put this court up for Carlton, but then, of course, he fell in love with lacrosse. So, he said, what's going on? And Will was like, what's wrong. And he said, but I think he was like, well, I know how you feel or whatever. And Will was like, do you know? Like, have you ever been arrested? He said, and he went through, them throwing him down on the ground and picking him up like garbage and throwing him in the police car. He said, and the whole thought knowing that at any moment in time, if I make a wrong move, that could be it. He said, it's really in my head and I don't know how to get it out of my head. And Uncle Phil was like, listen, this is what you need to do. He was like, you need to just you need to push that aside and focus on what you can focus on. Focus on that basket, get it out your head, and get your game back. Get back and get your game back. And so Will starts shooting. He's making the shots. Him and Uncle Phil are out there, and Uncle Phil is encouraging him. He's like, that's it. There you go. That's right. And who is outside behind them watching? Carlton. And Carlton is already jealous. So that didn't help anything at all because Carlton is absolutely jealous, right? Now, the other thing that happened the day before, I forgot, Will met a new little friend in his math class, and he's on the basketball team. So the next day, Will is asking him, he was like, I got my tryout with the coach today. He was like, but he said, is it really serious, or is it just some bullshit? Is it another setup? And he was like, nah. He said the coach is on the up and up. If he say he gonna give you a tryout, he gonna give you a fair shot. He said, just go in there, just stay focused. He was like, do what you gotta do. He said, but don't celebrate. Don't do no whole bunch of celebration. Just make your shot. Get back on defense. Will was like, okay, cool. He also liked the fact that Will punched Connor. He said he'd been wanting to punch Connor since the 6th grade. So he's cool. He's not one of the people that's mad at Will, right? So we see Lisa roll up on Carlton and tells Carlton, listen, I ain't trying to be in the middle of this shit between you and your cousin. And he was like, but you absolutely are. Like he said, you didn't have no problem getting in the middle of it yesterday when you was basically telling everybody that the fight was my fault. And she said, but at the end, she said because it was like I was being fair. And then she sees that Carlton's got some white stuff on his nose, and she was like, is that? He said, I just did a little bit, before school with all this stress going on. I got too much going on. And she was like, listen, you really need to get some help, and you need to get away from Connor. Because she basically said that Connor was his pusher. And she was like, you need to get away from Connor, and you really need to get some help. And he, pretty much tells her, where she can go and how she can get there, right? So later on that day, we see, Hillary talking to her followers, basically asking her followers, look, how much would you be willing to sacrifice, for for a dream opportunity? And her followers are basically telling her, girl, you better take that job. And she explains to them what they wanted her to give up and how she wasn't willing to give up who she really was at her core for that, So then we see Will go for his tryout. And of course, in the beginning, he was a little shaky. He missed a couple of shots. But then he got it. He got on it. He got back in his head, and he was making the shots. He was playing offense and defense. He wasn't celebrating. And the coach called him over and basically gave him a uniform and said, welcome to the team. And so, of course, Will was like, that's what he needed. So when it's over with, he's in the PT room, and he sees Carlton in an ice bath. And Carlton was like, what are you doing back here? Like, this area is for athletes only. And he was like, he holds up his basketball jersey, and he was like, well, it's a good thing I'm on the team, And Carlton is thoroughly disgusted by it. And Will gets cocky, and Will basically tells him, he was like, listen, I know you mad. I know you feeling some kind of way about it right now. He said, but please understand that now I'm in, and I'm about to take over this school, and I'm about to become the man. And you could see it is just eating Carlton up. So later on that day, we see Will with the coach and with the players, and they talking and having a good time. And Will starts walking off, like I guess he was walking towards his car, and security, the same security guard that chased him through the school, walks up on him and was like, I need to check your bag. And Will was like, what? He was like, I need to check your bag. He said, what do you mean? He's like, get up off me. He was like, look, I need to check that bag. And so Will was like, fine, check the bag. I don't have nothing in there. Now, again, Will, you know better. Like, you are from the city, in the city, you are from the hood. You know better than to just let somebody roll up on you talking about something, let me check your bag. Like, come on. You have to know that that was a setup. And of course it was, because they found drugs in his bag, and they ended up taking him, they ended up walking him off, and of course in front of all the students and the coach, and everybody's looking at him like he did something he wasn't supposed to do. And Carlton, you could tell that Carlton was genuinely shocked, like he didn't know what was going on either. And Carter tells Carlton, see, I told you I would handle it. And for a second, there's a little flicker in Carlton's face that's like, oh shit, that might have been too far. And that's where the second episode ends. So y'all let me know what y'all think. Drop it in the comments. Peace.